Welcome, player characters. I'm Mateo L., Dungeon Master of the Salvation campaign, which we are currently playing and putting episodes of a podcast on this channel, which you should check out if you enjoy listening to podcasts of Dungeons & Dragons. And today, I want to talk briefly about dungeon mastering, and more specifically, how to deliver a campaign or a session, Dungeon Master delivery. No, Dungeon Master delivery is not a type of pizza you can order. But what I think is very under-recognized and sometimes forgotten is how important delivering your dungeon can be to making an experience, making a session, making a campaign memorable for your party. Because as a Dungeon Master, obviously your goal is to make a session, make a campaign, make an experience, make a story that your party members, your players, are going to remember, they're going to enjoy, and they're going to have fun with. And one of the most important things to remember, and I'm going to make this my point number 1 of today, is that your party can't see behind your DM screen. It doesn't matter if you bought a pre-made campaign, if you spent months making a campaign for your party for them to go through, or if you're just improvising on the spot. No matter what one of those you're doing, the party can't see what you have in front of you. If you have your DM notes sitting in front of you, they have no idea. They have no idea what that paper says. And because of that, your description and how you deliver is extremely important to their enjoyance. So the first thing I want to talk about is descriptions. Describing rooms, describing people, describing weather, describing anything that you want to transfer to your players' minds. Make that a part of their world. Because an expression that I heard a while ago that I don't remember where it came from, but essentially it's that your players are exploring your world as though it's pitch black and all they have is a flashlight. Which means whatever they shine the light on, that's what you're going to describe to them. But they don't ever get the whole world. And because of that, you want to try to give them as much as they can in that narrow area of their flashlight. And because of that, I think that description is incredibly important. And one way to immediately make your description better is to always try to appeal to more than one sense. And what I mean by that is, let's say your party is going through a desert. In the second session of the Salvation campaign, the party goes through the Black Desert. And now, anyone can describe the desert physically. For example, in this desert, the desert is obsidian black sand. The party doesn't know why yet, there is a reason, but this desert is all black rolling dunes. Now, that description would be adequate for the players to have a mental image of this desert in their head. But what if you want to add more nuance? You want to add a little bit more flavor to your dungeon and make it more memorable. Instead of just describing that the desert is black sand, what if you add more senses to that? Say, for example, in the session, I added feeling, which was that they felt like as they walked through this desert, their feet were shifting in this sand and making it so that they had to work twice as hard to move half as far in the desert, and it was exhausting them very quickly. That little bit of description added, appealing to a second sense, makes it from a one-dimensional visual image to being far easier to place your player in his character and have him experience the dungeon, which makes it way more memorable. Other examples of how you could have added to that was that for taste, your mouth is parched and dry. You feel like you haven't drunk any water for days, even after a few minutes after sipping from your water skin. Or we could appeal to sound as the party hears vultures circling overhead, perhaps as an animal has died nearby, or as the party is beginning to suffer from dehydration and exhaustion points. So any of those would add more flavor to your dungeon than just the physical sight description. Now, my second point that I want to bring up goes along with descriptions, and that is going to be NPCs. Because obviously you want to describe an NPC when your party finds them. Your party wants to talk to a guardsman. You have to describe him. Your party wants to speak to the lord of a kingdom. You have to describe him. No matter what NPC it is, the description is important. Now, the first thing I want to say about this is that you want to make every NPC seem equally as important. Because whether it's an NPC you planned on them having an extended interaction with, like someone who's going to accompany them on their quest, or whether it's an NPC you never expected them to talk to, say there are town guardsmen wandering around and they want to go interrogate a guardsman and see what happened, like when a crime was committed in a city. You always want to make that interaction feel prepared for, even if it isn't. And that goes into a little bit of improvisation, which can be difficult for new dungeon masters, and I understand that. But a couple things can help you build more vivid NPCs, both beforehand and on the fly. One of the biggest things I can say for building an NPC on the fly, have a list of names in your Dungeon Master screen. Clip it, go right now, clip a list of names to your Dungeon Master screen, and have it there. And when your party encounters a new NPC that you didn't expect them to encounter, and they say, "What's your name?" Instead of fumbling around, coming up with a name, rolling on the name chart inside of your Dungeon Master screen, you can just have it. And all of a sudden, your player said, "Whoa, this NPC was prepared for. We didn't expect that." And that can make your party feel like they're on the right track, even if they're not, which can be fun. But it also makes them feel like the world is more immersive. It makes it feel real. Because you're never going to go up to someone in real life and say, "What's your name?" And they go, I don't know. Or they go, and then they roll some dice and come up with a name. You want that interaction to be seamless. Now, along with having names for all your NPCs, prepared for or unprepared for, is giving every NPC a personality. And that can go miles towards improving a player's experience in a dungeon. If they go up to the town guardsman and ask them, "Well, what happened here? There's a body. Did you see what happened? What do you know yet?" And the guardsman in a bland voice answers exactly what they know. And the player says, "Thank you," and walks away. Yes, the party got what they needed. Yes, they can progress from this point. But were they engaged? Is that a memorable encounter? Did they learn more than they needed? And did they have to roleplay and express their own character? Because here's a secret. Players love their characters. I've never met a player who's like, this character's alright. They brought that character to that campaign because they enjoy him. And you want to give them opportunities to express that character. So if they go up to the town guardsman and ask what happened, and the town guardsman has a personality, the town guardsman, say, might be racist towards that player's character. Let's say the player is a dwarf, and the guardsman is an elf, and the elf is very reluctant to give information to that dwarf. You've added a whole new dynamic to that encounter that would have normally just been a mundane question, answer, repeat. So giving your NPCs a little bit of extra personality can go a long ways to making things a little bit more vivid and a little bit more memorable for your party. Now, along with that, this is kind of point 2.5 for my talk today, is doing voices for your NPCs. And I am as guilty of this as the next person. I don't always do voices for my NPCs. There are days that I love doing voices, and there are days that I really don't want to. And partially it's because I don't want to, let's say the party is dealing with a very serious moment. For example, in the first session of the Salvation campaign, a child was murdered by a hellhound outside of the group's inn that they were staying in. And they then, let's say, wanted to interact with the parents of this slain child. If I had tried to do a voice for that parent and done a poor voice, done it poorly, made it laughable, that would have killed the mood for that encounter, right? That would have really messed up the atmosphere, because it's this tragic moment, and then you give the dad some sort of goofy voice, and all of a sudden it doesn't feel as serious. It doesn't feel as immersive anymore, because now your players are laughing rather than feeling the emotion that you're putting into their heads. But with that, I will say, voices also are an amazing way to increase immersion, because it makes NPCs have life. It makes the NPCs more than a name and stats. It makes the NPC someone your party not only talks to, but remembers by voice. You can even have a voice for an NPC that is so recognizable that you bring that voice back and they immediately know who it is. Let's say they encounter the NPC again and he's wearing a hood and his face is covered, but you use the voice and your party has that organic realization of, hey, this is whoever. And that can be really powerful. Point 3 of this guide is knowing when to keep the plot moving and when to back off and let the party have free reign. And what I mean by that is, as a Dungeon Master, you have your packet, your Google Word doc, your book, whatever, and you know everything that's going to happen. And so I understand if you want to move through that material, you want to keep the story moving. But sometimes it's okay to let the party have their time. And I mean that both, let's say you present the party with a difficult decision. Don't rush that decision. Let them come to that and let them figure out that decision with the time that they need. Now, in that, sometimes you want to keep it moving, and instead of, let's say, dropping a random encounter on the party or causing a weather event that makes the party keep moving, just give them a little bit more information, be it through an NPC. You could always have them roll perception checks to notice an extra clue. Make the movement feel organic. That is really important. Never make the party feel like, oh, the Dungeon Master made us keep going. Make it feel like it was a part of the game that made them keep going, or make them come to a realization that makes them keep going. Now, times that you don't want to disturb the party, when they are role-playing amongst themselves. I've seen several Dungeon Masters, and I've been a player when this happened, do this, where the party, let's say, settles down for the night, right? They create their campfire, and before anybody starts taking rest, they're sitting around the campfire, and organic dialogue between the characters starts. The characters are getting to know each other. They're getting to experience that. That is something you don't want to disturb as a Dungeon Master, and you even want to encourage, because like I said before, all players love their characters. That's a perfect opportunity for them to bring that character out. I will even, if I have an NPC in the party, which I do have a lot of, I'll have 1 or 2 NPCs accompanying the party, whether it's to fill gaps like the party doesn't have a healer, or it's someone giving them the quest and it's an important driver. I will have the NPC initiate that sort of dialogue and have the players take over. You don't want to disturb that. You want to let that take its course. Other times you don't want to disturb the party is when they're making decisions. Besides that, basically, what I would say is, if the party is slowing down due to an in-character thing, such as decision-making, role-playing, or something along those lines, don't disturb it. But if they're being slowed down due to out-of-character reasons, such as table talk, such as, goofing around, getting off track, you might want to redirect them. Some ways to redirect them are, as I said, little perception checks for more clues. Random encounters can spice things up, or any other way you can think of to just gently push the party in the right direction. And now, for my 4th and final point, I want to talk about reading your players, because that is essential to making sure that they're enjoying the campaign, because as a Dungeon Master, that's your main job. So what I mean by that is that different groups of players will have different desires and wants out of a campaign. So say, for example, one group of players wants tons of vivid descriptions. They want to have this perfect image of everything you describe before they start interacting with your environment, and the other group of players wants a quick 1-minute description, and they want to start getting in there and hitting things or talking to NPCs or something. So you want to figure that out as early on in a campaign as you can. You want to figure out how they do that, and you don't necessarily want to ask them. You want to do that just by body clues so that the campaign feels natural to them. You want to make everything feel organic. And so one way you can do that is by reading them. And what I mean by that is, Let's say you're halfway through this long description and you notice your players are on their phones, there's side chatter, they're bored of it, speed it up, get them to the interaction, make them get involved. Whereas if you finish up a 1-minute description and your party just sits there blinking, not knowing what to do, then you want to add a little bit more description to it because they don't have enough information to act. And you want to figure out what player group you have so you can play to that. And in addition to that, you also want to play to your character's beliefs. And this one's risky, and so you want to use this sparingly and really not go all in on it. But let's say your party is out of direction, right? They are in a town, they're not on the path you really intended for them, but you don't want to just grab them and forcibly, reset them. But you still want to find a way to make them feel satisfied with the campaign, the session. You want to make them feel like they accomplished the end goals. Like I said before, your party can't see behind your DM screen. So one of the ways you can do that is reading your party and playing to what they're wanting. Let's say, I don't know, this has happened to me before, that they are on an investigative mission where they're trying to figure out where something's hidden in a city. And they haven't really been successful at all, but one of the players gets a hunch that it's in the South Docks, right? Let's say you had planned for it to be in the Northern Noble District, but your party wants to go to the South Docks. You don't want to have them waste time and go down there, realize they're wrong, go all the way back up. So what if you just moved it to the South Docks, made them feel like they were on the right track all along? And I know you could argue that that's artificial. You're creating that. But all you're doing is creating a story. You are a storyteller as a dungeon master. You're a bard, essentially. And you want your characters to enjoy that story and be a part of it. And if they think that's where it is, and they don't really have any indication otherwise, you've tried to give them clues or whatever, and they're not listening, move the campaign to fit where they're going. Another great example of this that I've used countless times, you designed a really cool dungeon and put it in the mountains. And your party, for some reason, wants to go to the woods. You don't want to railroad your party and get them stuck into going into the mountains because they want to go into the woods. Who knows why? Move your dungeon into the woods. It's not hard to adapt a dungeon on the fly. Just move it. And so that's kind of what I mean by reading your players. Not only read how much they're enjoying your campaign, but read what they want and try to give that to them. Now, I don't mean always do that, because if your players start to feel like no matter what they do, they always end up in the right spot, that's fake, and they will realize it, and it will be less fun. But every once in a while, if your party's not having fun and they're really lost, shift a few things around to make it what they need it to be in order for things to work out. And that goes along with my final tip, which is feeding the story. Everything in this video, all of these tips on delivering a dungeon, go towards one end goal. And that is something, no matter your style as a dungeon master, you can agree, is that this is a story. You're creating a story. And you want to feed into that in every way possible, and you want to make a story that your players will remember. And because of that, I say feed the story. And I kind of want to leave that up to interpretation. However you feel like you can feed the story, you should. Because the more rich and fulfilling you can make the story, the more your players are going to enjoy that story. And with that, happy campaigning.